Okay, so moving on to the AFC North. Now, this is a division that I'm not sure what you have, but this division winner was a huge debate for me.
Yeah.
For many reasons. One, I expect quite a bit of regression from the Ravens, and I'm sure you do too, as it's just every stat you look at, they just can't repeat that kind of offensive efficiency. And I really like the Steelers. So picking between these two teams was very difficult for me. I ended up putting them both at 10-6.
Okay.
What do you have?
So I actually have this division, as you said, is easily the most interesting division in the league for me heading into next year. I have the Ravens in first at 11-5, just because I think they have the best coaching overall. And I actually have the Browns and the Steelers at 10-6, second and third.
Okay.
Which would be rare and unprecedented, and I don't think it would happen. But I actually had a few days ago the Steelers in first at 11-5.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I just think something about Big Ben. Just I don't know. Like I don't think he's going to be bad. He's definitely going to be better than what they had last year. But
yeah, it's hard to buy into it.
It's really hard to buy into that offense. I do think they have a lot of good young playmakers. They have still a tremendous offensive line, which they've had for a couple of years. If the Steelers are to realize their potential, it'll be because they have the best defense in the NFL. And I think, I'm not saying they do have the best defense, but you can make the case. And I think if they do play up to that expectation and play as good as they did last year, then I could absolutely see them winning the division. But yeah, so like you, I actually have the Ravens in first. I have the Steelers tied with the Browns, second, third. Like, it doesn't really matter how you order it. But let's touch on the Ravens. So they did lose Earl Thomas. They lost Michael Pierce. They lost Marshall Yanda to retirement. And they lost Tony Jefferson. But they did add Calais Campbell for essentially nothing. They added J.K. Dobbins, the stud rookie from Ohio State. They added Derek Wolfe, who's another good veteran pass rusher. Patrick Queen, who is one of the better linebackers in the draft, and speedy wideout Devin Duvernay. So while I think their roster did take a hit, I think they reloaded well enough to still compete and be one of the more elite teams in the NFL. I'm just curious to see how teams defend Lamar. I think that's really going to be the deciding factor, whether they go 10-6 or 12-4 or better. Because if Lamar can, add another element to his game, if he keeps improving as a passer this year, then it's really going to be hard for defenses to guess what he's going to do. If he's as dynamic as he was last year, I could easily see the Ravens taking this division because they're going to be one of the hardest teams to beat. But that remains such a question mark for me because the Steelers are a tremendous defensive team. I think the Browns could improve defensively. So there you have two teams that might have figured out a solution in Lamar Jackson, and who knows, maybe the rest of the league did too. So I'm kind of unsure what to think about him. What do you think about the Ravens offense this year?
Yeah, okay, so I have a stat here, and that's of the previous 12 teams to win 14 or more games in the past 20 years, as the Ravens did last year, only one team, the Patriots in 2004, won fewer than just one more loss the next season.
Right.
So on average, if you win 14 or more games, on average these teams lose 4 or more games the next season. Okay. So with that being said, I take a look at it from a logical standpoint. Are the Ravens built as a team to be closer to the Patriots than the mean? And I in no way in my mind is that true. I think the Ravens are bound for regression in win total. Don't get me wrong. I think they're still going to be a very good team. But when I look at them, I can't help but think a little bit of the 2015 Carolina Panthers, who went 15-1 on the brink of an amazing Cam Newton season. And again, Lamar Jackson's much better than Cam Newton. They both boasted top 3 defenses in the league. And the next season, the Panthers regressed to a below 500 record of 7-9. So I don't think the Ravens are going to regress that far. But when you look at that over-under win total of 11.5, realistically, the only bet for me is the under. I think the Ravens are, as you said, in a very tough division. The Steelers and Browns both have legitimate playoff potential, improved rosters, what should be solid coaching. And so this is the Ravens team that I wouldn't necessarily bet on, especially with their very, very high projections to win both the division and their win totals on the season. I would take the Steelers on an over before I took the Ravens on an over, and it's not even close. And I mean, it's just this division's a toss up for me. I didn't say a winner, and I don't really have one right now because I think it's gonna be a dogfight all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so hard, as you said, to predict a winner. I mean, we touched on the Ravens. Now I think it's a good time to jump into the Steelers, who we both have at 10-6. And I agree with you. I would bet hard on the over for the Steelers. I think this is a team with just tremendous upside, and honestly, like, they could go 12-4. I know the Steelers have had their questions in the past, and they tend to play down to the competition against worse teams and up to the competition against better teams. But I just think with this young core, they have so many players that could potentially break out, and if they all hit, then this is going to be a really hard team to score on and a really hard team to stop offensively. I mean, James Conner, we've seen if he can stay healthy, he's proven that he can be a very, very good running back. You look at a wide receiver core of Juju Smith-Schuster, of Deontay Johnson. I'm blanking on their third wide receiver right now. I believe yeah.
And they added Chase
Claypool. And Eric Ebron, who can be a threat in the passing game as a tight end. So I think, and of course, as I mentioned, the offensive line. I just think this team has all the ingredients. Despite not having an elite quarterback, they have the complete roster and the good enough quarterback to be one of those surprise teams. This team kind of reminds me of the Jaguars 2017 with the defense, the studs on defense that they have, and then I think Big Ben will be better than Blake Bortles, which isn't going to be very hard to do. But the Jaguars they had Leonard Fournette. I could see James Conner being a Leonard Fournette back what he was in 2017, and they had a good receiving core. I think the Steelers have a bit more potential there, and they just had a good enough offense to support their tremendous defense. And if the Steelers' defense lives up to the hype, then this will absolutely be a team that can contend this year. As crazy it is to say that, because a year ago, I never would have thought the Steelers would be a 10-plus win team heading into 2020. So,
yeah, they're a team that definitely look like they're on the decline. But you make a good point there. With the Jaguars reference, because they don't need Big Ben's 38, and we've seen quite a few quarterbacks who've high-level quarterbacks produce into their 40s. So I don't think father time for him yet. If he can stay healthy, they don't need him to be elite. They have a good enough team around him that if he can just be an above-average game manager for them who can make a couple throws here and there, I like the Steelers. So a couple quick points I want to make on them before we move on. The Steelers. The Steelers, first of all, were first in the turnover battle last year, with just an incredible defense, as we said, and that's bound for regression. So they'll take a step back there. But on the flip side of it, the Steelers were 30th in the NFL in third down conversion percentage last year. And I think with Big Ben, a healthy James Conner, and as you said, all those weapons, that number's bound to go up. And if they're just in the middle of the pack, like for this statistic, all the top teams are the Saints, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, all the top tier offenses. If they're just middle of the pack in that, with that defense, I think this team has a really good chance to exceed expectation and have a great 2020 season.
Absolutely. I can see you're a believer in the Steelers too, just like me. So I'm interested to see what they do this year. Moving on in third, I have the Browns. As I said, I have them at 10-6. 10-6, 9-7. I couldn't really choose, so I wrote both down. I don't know. Before I get into what I think about the Browns, what do you think about them? You have them as your third team as well.
I do. So I actually have the Browns at 8-8.
Okay.
And that's just mainly because of the tough division that they're in right now. And I think they're far more likely to go 10-6, even 11-5, than to worsen on their win total last year or go 6-10. You look at them, they're set up for a win now, and just last offseason, we saw possibly the biggest hype train of our lifetime on what the 2019-2020 Browns would be. They flopped, but the thing is all that stuff is still there. They still have Odell, who's going to be healthy this year. Jarvis Landry, probably the best running back duo in the league. And, a Baker Mayfield who, when utilized properly, when dropping back in shotgun formation, using this zone run scheme here. And I put them third because I do like the Steelers more just based off of their defense. But if the Browns could turn out some dominant offensive numbers, which I think they're totally capable of, I think your projection has just as good of a chance as mine with this one.
Yeah, I agree with you a lot on the Browns. To me, the reason why I have them at 9-7, 10-6, I just think the Stefanski offense will be perfect for Baker Mayfield because I think he'll come in. He's really going to focus on the run game. They have the perfect running backs to complement his system. And I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off Baker Mayfield. One of the things I think could maximize his ability, because he does have big throw ability, but his decision-making is rather questionable at times, I think it's fair to say. So I think if they can put them in a role similar to Kirk Cousins last year, where they don't really ask him to make such crazy decisions down the field, he really just needs to hit guys on short routes, on intermediate routes, and just be accurate and take a lot of the pressure off of him. He can rely on the run game. I think we could see more of the Baker Mayfield we saw as a rookie than the slump he had last year. And because of that, I think that could maximize this offense, and it could be really dangerous and really hard to stop. I mean, they have playmakers, as you said, all over the field. Nick Chubb, easily a top 5 running back in the NFL. Kareem Hunt, a former All-Pro 2-3 years ago. Austin Hooper had a breakout season last year in Atlanta. They added Taylor Lewan, I believe, at tackle, correct?
Jack Conklin.
Jack Conklin. I always get them mixed up.
Yeah.
And and Jedrick Wills, who could, out of all the tackles, was probably the most NFL ready. So I think they fixed a lot of kind of the less flashy issues they had last year, and because of that, I think they have a lot of talent. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, the linebacker core isn't great. They lost Grant Delpit, who I thought could have a great impact as a rookie, which is tough, but they still have a good enough team. They have a very strong defensive line, a stud corner in Denzel Ward, that I think this could be this year. The Browns could live up to the hype that they had last year.
Yeah, and I agree. That's the exact same train of thought that I had. The hype is gone because they so poorly underachieved last year. But yeah, I agree with all the points you made. I think the Browns have a lot of upside to potentially actually make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think the division that they're in hurts them because they are going to be in a lot of competitive games, and we'll get to the Bengals in a second, who I think are going to be quite improved this year. But I mean, overall, you can't hate on the Browns, and they're one of the teams that I'll be watching this year for sure.
Definitely. All right, so moving into the last team in this division, I have the Bengals going 5-11. How about you?
All right, so I have them at 6-10.
Okay.
And honestly, it's a little bit of a conservative projection for me. The only reason I'm not projecting the Bengals for a closer to 500 finish is because I don't believe in Zach Taylor yet. If Zach Taylor can show that he's capable of winning games that the Bengals should win, which they did not last year, and that worries me a little bit. again, the Hugh Jackson effect, underperformance, and losing games that you should win, I would project the Bengals to win at least 7 games this year. And the reason for that is because, when you look at this roster, minus the O-line, this is a really good team. Now, the O-line doesn't help, that's for sure, but Joe Burrow's an NFL-ready quarterback. They made some great offseason additions to boost that secondary and defense. And, I like the Bengals. I think it's going to be sooner than we think for this team to be good. Again, whether that's with or without Zach Taylor, to be determined, but I like the core that they have coming.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually wrote down as my 1 point for the Bengals, Zach Taylor. He's the biggest question mark. As you said, can he prove that he can put together a half-decent team with the talent that he has on the offensive side of the ball? Given that he is an offensive-minded coach, you would expect the answer to that question to be yes, but at the same time, as you said, he hasn't proven anything. And if it shows that he's not really a great coach, then this team is going to struggle because they don't have the offensive line to really dominate other teams. They're going to have to rely on getting the ball out quickly. But luckily enough for them, they have playmakers that can do that. I mean, you look at Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, even Auden Tate. Like, that is a really solid core to add around your first-year quarterback. And we both agreed that we think Joe Burrow can be very good as a rookie. I don't expect him to struggle all too much unless, as I said, the offensive scheme just doesn't work. And on the defensive side of the ball, I really like their additions in DJ Reader and Von Bell. I think that's going to really help them out this year, especially DJ Reader. He's one of the more underrated interior linemen in the league. So I could easily see them going, 6-10, as you said, even 7-9, but it all depends. Again, to sum up my points, it all depends on the coaching. It all depends on the scheme, because they could easily be just as poor as they were last year, despite the roster additions.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm curious to see where this conversation is and if and what Zach Taylor proves this year. Because, if they had a marginally better, I'd say a mid-tier O-line and a proven coach, I personally would project the Bengals around 9-7 this year.
I agree.
So how far they come from that mark, we'll see. How much of that is because of the O-line, rookie quarterback, head coach. There's just a lot of question marks that prevent that kind of projection over more proven and ready teams like the Browns and the Steelers and the Ravens. But the Bengals are definitely a team to watch, and maybe they'll go 1-15 this year. It's possible. It is possible. I think that's extremely unlikely. I think it's more likely they have a winning record than do that. But again, we'll see how these question marks play out and revisit at a later time.
Definitely.